On a cold November morning in a forgotten corner of the city, beneath an abandoned overpass where most people never looked, a small miracle was unfolding. But it wasn't the kind of miracle you'd expect. This was a story of survival, of loyalty, and of a love so pure that it could break your heart and put it back together again. This is the true story of Buddy, a 4-month-old puppy who refused to leave his mother's side, even when leaving might have saved his own life. Our rescue team received a call at 6:47 a.m. A construction worker had spotted something unusual near the old railway bridge on the east side of town. He said he heard crying. Not human crying, but something that pulled at his heart just the same. We had no idea that we were about to witness one of the most moving displays of devotion we'd ever seen. When we arrived at the location, the scene before us was heartbreaking. Tucked behind a pile of discarded concrete blocks and rusted metal sheets was a makeshift den. And there, lying motionless on a bed of torn cardboard and scattered leaves, was a mother dog. Her golden brown fur was matted with mud and rain. Her ribs were clearly visible through her thin coat. She was barely breathing. But that's not what caught our attention first. What stopped us in our tracks was the puppy. A small, scruffy little thing with oversized paws and ears too big for his head. He was frantically running back and forth between his mother and a puddle of rainwater about 20 feet away. In his tiny mouth, he carried a piece of plastic bottle cap, desperately trying to bring water to his mother. Over and over again, he made this journey, dipping the bottle cap into the puddle, carefully carrying it back, trying to tilt it toward his mother's mouth. Most of the water spilled before he could reach her, but he never gave up. He never stopped trying. Sarah, one of our most experienced rescuers, had tears streaming down her face. "In 15 years of doing this," she whispered, "I've never seen anything like this." The puppy noticed us approaching. Instead of running away like most strays would, he positioned himself between us and his mother. His tiny body was trembling, but he stood his ground. He let out the smallest, shakiest bark, a warning that said, "Don't you dare hurt her." As we carefully assessed the situation, the pieces of this tragic puzzle began to come together. The mother dog, who we would later name Grace, had likely given birth here weeks ago. The construction worker told us he'd seen her around the area for months, always alone, always searching through garbage for food. She had chosen this spot because it offered shelter from the rain and wind. Scattered around the den were remnants of her attempts to survive. Empty food containers she'd scavenged, an old blanket she'd somehow dragged here, torn pieces of cardboard arranged to create walls. But now Grace was in critical condition. We suspected she was suffering from severe malnutrition, dehydration, and possibly an infection. Her body had given everything to keep her puppy alive, and now she had nothing left to give. Buddy, we named him that because of how he stayed by his mother's side, had clearly been trying to care for her. Around the den, we found small piles of food scraps he'd collected. A half-eaten hamburger bun, some crackers, a piece of dried meat. He'd been bringing her everything he could find. But the most gut-wrenching evidence of his devotion was a trail we discovered. It led from the den to a dumpster behind a nearby restaurant about a quarter-mile away. This tiny puppy, barely 4 months old, had been making this dangerous journey through traffic and across busy streets to find food for his dying mother. The restaurant owner later told us he'd seen the puppy several times, always grabbing food and running away as fast as his little legs could carry him. "I thought he was just hungry," the man said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know he was trying to save someone." Now came the hardest part, gaining Buddy's trust. We needed to help Grace immediately, but Buddy wasn't going to let us near her without a fight. Despite his small size and obvious exhaustion, his spirit was enormous. Dr. Martinez, our veterinarian, slowly approached with a bowl of food and fresh water. She moved so gently, speaking in soft, soothing tones. "It's okay, little one. We're here to help. We're going to save your mama." Buddy's eyes darted between the food and his mother. You could see the conflict in his little face. He was starving, his tiny ribs were showing too, but he didn't trust us, not yet. Then something beautiful happened. Grace, who we thought was unconscious, opened her eyes. With what must have been her last reserve of strength, she lifted her head just slightly and looked at her puppy. It was as if she was telling him, "It's okay. Let them help." Buddy whimpered and crawled to his mother's side, licking her face gently. Then he looked back at us, and slowly, cautiously, he stepped aside. Sarah moved in quickly but carefully. She wrapped Grace in a warm blanket while Dr. Martinez started an IV line right there on the street. Grace's vital signs were dangerously weak. Her temperature was too low. Her heartbeat was irregular. We were quite possibly minutes away from losing her. But here's where Buddy showed us the depth of his love once again. As we carefully lifted Grace onto a stretcher, Buddy began to cry, the most heartbreaking sound you've ever heard. He tried to climb onto the stretcher with her. When we gently held him back, he grabbed onto the blanket with his teeth and wouldn't let go. "Bring him too," Dr. Martinez said firmly. "We're not separating them, not now, not ever." The race to our emergency clinic was tense. In the back of the van, Buddy curled up right next to his mother's head, his small body pressed against hers. He wasn't crying anymore. He was just being there like he'd been there all along, keeping watch. Grace's condition was worse than we feared. She was suffering from severe anemia, multiple infections, and her body was shutting down. She weighed only 28 pounds. She should have been at least 50. Her body had cannibalized its own muscles to produce milk for Buddy. Dr. Martinez worked through the night. Fluids, antibiotics, nutrients, warmth. Every intervention modern veterinary medicine could offer. But sometimes medicine isn't enough. Sometimes what saves a life is something deeper, something we can't quantify or prescribe. And that's where Buddy came in. We'd set up a small bed for him next to his mother's treatment area. He refused to sleep in it. Instead, he positioned himself right by the opening of Grace's oxygen tent, where he could see her. Every few minutes he'd let out a small whine as if calling to her. "Mom, I'm here, don't leave me, please don't leave me." At 3 a.m., Grace's heart rate dropped dangerously low. The monitors started beeping urgently. Dr. Martinez rushed in, prepared to start emergency resuscitation. But before she could begin, something extraordinary happened. Buddy started howling, not the scared whimpering of before, but a strong, clear howl. He put his tiny paws up against the oxygen tent and howled like he was calling his mother back from wherever she was drifting. And Grace's heart rate stabilized, just like that. Dr. Martinez checked the monitors 3 times, certain they were malfunctioning. They weren't. Grace was fighting back. Maybe she heard her baby calling. Maybe she wasn't ready to leave him alone in this world. Maybe love really is the strongest medicine. The next morning, Grace opened her eyes, actually opened them and looked around with awareness. When she saw Buddy curled up just outside her tent, still keeping watch after staying awake all night, she tried to wag her tail. It was the weakest little wag, barely a flutter, but it was there. We finally let Buddy inside to see her. He approached so carefully, as if afraid she might break. He gently licked her nose, and Grace, with tremendous effort, licked him back. In that moment, everyone in the clinic was crying. These weren't tears of sadness anymore. These were tears of hope. Grace's recovery was slow but steady. Every day she got a little stronger, and every day Buddy was right there beside her. When she finally felt strong enough to eat solid food, Buddy did something that showed us once again the depth of their bond. We'd given him his own bowl of food, but he picked up pieces and brought them to his mother first, making sure she ate before he did. This puppy, who was still just a baby himself, had learned to be a caretaker. He'd grown up too fast, forced by circumstances to become his mother's protector. And he'd done it. Against all odds, this tiny hero had saved his mother's life just by refusing to give up on her. As Grace regained her strength, we began to see her personality emerge. She was gentle and sweet with the most soulful brown eyes. You could see the intelligence in her face, the awareness of everything she'd been through, and you could see her gratitude. Every morning when Dr. Martinez came in for rounds, Grace would try to stand up to greet her, her tail wagging with genuine joy. It was as if she knew that these humans, who Buddy had finally trusted, had saved her life. The bond between mother and son grew even stronger during recovery. They were inseparable. When Grace was finally strong enough to take short walks, Buddy would walk beside her, matching his pace to hers, looking up at her constantly to make sure she was okay. Their roles had reversed again. He was still taking care of her, but now she could take care of him too. After 6 weeks of intensive care, both Grace and Buddy were declared healthy. Grace had gained 27 pounds, and her coat, once dull and matted, now shone in the sunlight. Buddy had grown too, becoming the rambunctious, playful puppy he should have been all along. But he never strayed far from his mother's side. The transformation wasn't just physical. These 2 dogs, who had known only struggle and survival, were learning what it meant to feel safe, to trust, to play, to be loved. Buddy discovered toys for the first time in his life. His favorite was a small stuffed bear, which he would carry everywhere, except when he thought his mother needed it more. Then he'd carefully place it next to her, sharing his treasure the same way he'd once shared scraps of food. Grace learned to enjoy simple pleasures, Soft beds, regular meals, gentle hands that only wanted to pet her, not hurt her. She learned to relax, to let her guard down, to sleep peacefully without one eye open watching for danger. But the most beautiful thing we witnessed was watching them play together. Grace, despite everything she'd been through, still had puppy spirit left in her. She was only about 2 years old herself. When she felt strong enough, she'd bow down in play stance and Buddy would jump on her, and they'd tumble around together, both of them making happy sounds we'd never heard before. These were sounds of joy, of healing, of a future that looked nothing like their past. When it came time to find them a home, we knew we couldn't separate them. We'd received over 300 adoption applications. News of their story had spread, touching hearts around the world. But we were looking for something special. We needed a home that understood their bond, their story, their needs. We found it in the Morrison family. James and Linda Morrison had recently lost their own dog to old age after 16 beautiful years together. Their teenage daughter Emma had seen Buddy and Grace's story online and showed it to her parents through tears. "This is them," she said. "This is our family." When the Morrisons came to meet Grace and Buddy, the connection was immediate. Buddy, who had learned to trust slowly, walked right up to Emma and put his paw on her knee. Grace, always the more cautious one, sniffed James's hand and then leaned against his leg. It was as if they knew this was home. On the day they left our facility, Grace walked out with her head held high, Buddy trotting confidently beside her. They turned back once to look at all of us who had cared for them, and I swear Grace's eyes said, "Thank you." Today, 6 months later, Grace and Buddy are thriving. The Morrisons send us photos every week. There's Buddy and Grace sleeping in a patch of sunlight on the living room floor. There's Buddy wearing a tiny superhero cape that Emma made for him. There's Grace, healthy and strong, running through the Morrisons' backyard with Buddy chasing after her. Both of them finally free to just be dogs. The story of Buddy and Grace reminds us that love isn't just a human emotion. Animals feel deeply, love fiercely, and sacrifice selflessly. This tiny puppy showed us what real heroism looks like. It's not about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about refusing to give up on someone you love, even when all hope seems lost. Buddy saved his mother by simply staying by her side, by bringing her water one capful at a time, by howling her back to life when she was slipping away. And in doing so, he saved himself too. Because love, real love, saves everyone it touches. Their story ended with joy, but thousands of animals are still out there, waiting for their rescue, waiting for their buddy, waiting for their chance at the happy ending they deserve. If this story touched your heart, consider supporting your local animal rescue. Volunteer, foster, adopt, donate, because every animal has a story and they all deserve a chance to write a happy ending. This was the true story of Buddy and Grace, a hero puppy and the mother he refused to let go.